bill.
Right.
When do you expect that to get done?
Well, I hope soon. The big, beautiful bill. It passed its first test, and now they're going to eventually take, pretty soon, a final vote. And the big, beautiful tax cuts and regulation cuts and all of the other things that are included in there will go into effect. And I think it'll be probably the largest tax cuts in the history of our country. The most comprehensive regulation cuts in the history of our country, and many, many other things, including border and wall money. We built 571 miles of wall, but now we can add to it.
That's President Trump last night discussing one big reconciliation package versus several others, which the Senate was working on 2 or 3. That was on Air Force One last night. House Speaker Mike Johnson joined me yesterday on Sunday Morning Futures, explaining the importance of passing that bill. And he said he wouldn't be surprised if it's pushed out to June as for when it gets to the president's desk. Watch. Are you still counting on getting that bill by the end of May?
Yeah, the timing's critical. We have to show that stability to the markets. We have to send a message to the bond market, the stock market, investors, to our allies around the world and our enemies as well, that America is on sound fiscal ground. Memorial Day as our deadline is because the sooner we get it done, the better. It will really calm, I think, a lot of the things in the economy and start us back on that path to real recovery.
The idea that you can have a new tax bracket of 40% for the highest earners, are you seriously considering that?
Well, I'm not a big fan of doing that. I mean, we're the Republican Party, and we're for tax reduction for everyone. So, I mean, that's a general principle that we always try to abide by.
Yeah, he said don't bet on it. I would not bet on raising taxes for the rich to pay for the lowest earners' tax cuts. Joining me now is Missouri Congressman Eric Burlison. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you for being here. I want to get your take on this because I know you've got to get 218 votes. You know, you've got to get the support for the reconciliation bill. How much do you think that your members are going to feel that they'll vote for it if it's not a higher tax rate for the rich?
Yeah, I don't think that would go very far. That would absolutely throw a monkey wrench into the system. There's a lot of individuals. Look, the top 1% are right now paying 40% of the share of America's taxes, and yet they're not getting tremendously more from their money. It's not like the top 1% get to have that much more libraries or schools or roads. They're really footing the bill for most Americans. I think that if we increase those taxes, we've seen from history when they did have higher taxes, it really had a very negative impact on economic growth.
Yeah, well, I mean, so then why are your colleagues talking about this? I mean, House Freedom Caucus Chairman Andy Harris was with me here last week. He said, yeah, he's considering a 40% tax bracket for those people earning $1 million or more. Here he is with me just last week. Here, watch.
But if we can't get enough spending reductions, we're going to have to pay for our tax cuts, again, to make sure that we don't go down the road of fiscal deterioration on this. That's one possibility.
Tell me about this 40% tax bracket.
Yeah, before the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the highest bracket was 39.6,
yes,
and it was less than $1 million. Ideally, what we could do, again, if we can't find spending reductions, is say, okay, let's restore that higher bracket. Let's set it at maybe $2 million income and above to help pay for the rest of the president's agenda, which is, of course, no tax on tips and potentially other tax cuts.
Well, Congressman, you and I both know that would go completely against what President Trump has been telling us and what he's been campaigning on. So why is he even talking about this? And if you don't do that, how do you come up with the offsets to placate those members who want more spending cuts?
Yeah, that's a good question. I disagree with my friend Andy Harris respectfully. I don't think that we need to raise taxes on the rich. I think that we need to find spending cuts. Look, we've got a spending problem, not a revenue problem. Whenever we continue to encourage countries to buy our debt, it's not putting us in a good position. We're driving up interest rates because we're the number one buyer of debt. We're also keeping inflation high because we're spending more money that we're bringing in. The one key thing that we can do to really unlock a lot and deliver on President Trump's agenda is to find spending cuts. And that's what I think that we need to focus on, not talking about finding ways of increasing taxes.
Okay. Meanwhile, New Jersey Senator Cory Booker is now demanding that Congress investigate the White House for insider trading after the stock market rally on Wednesday when President Trump put a pause on the tariffs. Watch this.
There is enough of an offense here. There's enough smoke here that should demand congressional hearings. These are real, legitimate, justifiable questions, and not to have hearings, not to do any kind of oversight undermines the faith we have in our government, undermines the trust we need in our nation right now.
Look, Congressman, you're on the Oversight Committee. Is there enough smoke here? I'm not sure what he's referring to, honestly, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think he's reaching. Otherwise, why didn't he give up any facts? And I would say, show us your facts. Show us any evidence that you've got, because I'll tell you, there's more circumstantial evidence that the Democratic Party and that Nancy Pelosi and so many of them have been doing insider trading for quite some time. Look, if you want to have that investigation, let's go, because there's a lot of members like myself who gave up the ability to trade individual stocks, and I put my money all into index funds. So I'm happy. Let's have an investigation, but let's have it on everybody.
Yeah, I like that idea, actually. You know, Liz Peek, maybe if we were to see an investigation, we actually could go back and start looking at some of the trades that Paul Pelosi made, you know, and they were so coincidental, aligning with actual legislation that was happening or that was coming. So maybe we should have an investigation on all of this.
Maria,
otherwise, I think he's pulling this out of thin air. What the heck is he talking about?
100%. These are totally unfounded allegations.
Exactly.
Let's go back to the Pelosi portfolio, which last year, Maria, was up 54%. Do you know many hedge funds that recorded a 54% gain last year? It was even better than what they call the inverse Cramer index, which is doing the opposite of what Jim Cramer says, which was up 43%. Nancy Pelosi has an incredible stock trading future. What our viewers should know is that she doesn't just buy and sell stocks. She buys options, which are short-term instruments, meaning you're placing a bet on something happening. So honestly, I say to Cory Booker, you bet. Let's open this book. Let's go back. We've talked about doing this. We've talked about restrictions on congressmen trading for an awfully long time. Let's look at the numbers and see who is making out against the public by insider information.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know what, Congressman? I like this. Let's open up this can of worms because this is way too coincidental. And by the way, why is the former Speaker of the House buying options?
Good question.
Right. And I think we ought to open up all the investigation on all the grift that's happening. Look, it's no wonder that all this money has been flowing to NGOs and other programs. Yeah. Let's see how many family members have profited and directly benefited by being connected to these programs.
Yeah, let's get James Comer on the case.
If you want to have that investigation, let's go.
Oversight. Yep. Yeah, he'll dig into this for sure. Congressman, it's good to see you. We're going to keep a spotlight on that one. Eric Burlison joining us. Stay with us. We'll be right back.